When the final whistle blows on a football match, that's usually the end of the story, right? Well, not this time. For this particular game, the final whistle was just the beginning. Because what happened over those 90 minutes, it wasn't just a game. It was a brutal, brutal lesson in reality. And it all kicked off with one single, unbelievable scoreline.
10-1. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Seriously, 10-1. That's the kind of score you put up in a video game when you've turned the difficulty way down, not something you see in a real professional match. It's just shocking, isn't it? And trust me, it tells a way bigger story than just a bunch of goals.
And let's be super clear about this. This wasn't some friendly kickabout, a preseason match where nobody's really trying. No. This was a real, official, competitive game. And in that game, a Premier League powerhouse they completely dismantled a lower league team. And they did it without showing even a tiny bit of mercy.
Okay, so that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. Because a scoreline like 10-1, that's not just about one team having a really, really good day at the office. No, it shines this giant, glaring spotlight on the massive, and you could even say cruel, class divide that runs right through professional football.
I mean, just get a load of this mismatch. On one side, you've got Manchester City, right? A Premier League giant. But here's the kicker. They didn't even play their starts. This was a team of their young prospects, their reserve players. And on the other side, you've got Exeter from a lower league, and they brought out their absolute best, their full first-team squad. And even then, even City's B team was playing on a completely different planet. It's just wild.
So here's the thing. You gotta understand. From the very first whistle, this game was basically over. Manchester City just unleashed a relentless storm. They controlled the ball like it was a simple training drill. Every single pass, every single move. It was like another hammer blow, just driving home this one undeniable truth. The gap between the very top of football and the leagues below, it is so much wider and more brutal than most of us ever realize.
But to really get why something like this happens, we have to try and get inside the heads of the winning team. Because this wasn't just random dominance. This was a performance that was, in its own way, brutal for a very specific reason.
And that leads to the big question everyone was asking after the match. Was it really necessary? Why score 10? I mean, once you're up 4-0, 5-0, the game is obviously won. Why not just ease off the gas a little? Well, for a coach like Pep Guardiola, the answer is a hard yes. It all comes down to his ruthless three-step standard. First, every single game is a chance to prove that elite standard, no matter who you're playing. Second, every minute on that pitch is a chance to evaluate his players. And third, for those young players, every goal they score is like their application for a spot on the first team. In a system like that, there's just no off switch.
And what this all boils down to is a really stark, kind of cold conclusion about how elite athletes think. In that world, showing mercy isn't good sportsmanship. It's seen as weakness. It's a failure to maintain the absolute, ruthless standard you need to be the best.
But, of course, that standard has a very real human cost. So now, let's flip the script and look at this from the other side. For the losing team, Exeter, this wasn't just a loss on their record. It was a completely devastating, painful, public defeat.
I mean, can you imagine what a 10-1 loss actually feels like when you're on the pitch? It's just a total breakdown. Your defense collapses pretty early. You start making the same simple mistakes over and over again because the pressure is just suffocating. And pretty soon, you don't just lose your energy, you lose your heart. You're left with absolutely nothing in the tank, no way to even fight back. And that feeling of just complete helplessness, it spread right into the stands. There were reports from the game that some of Exeter's own fans, their own supporters, couldn't even bring themselves to look at the scoreboard by the end. It just paints this picture of total heartbreak that covered the entire club and its community. Now, Exeter did score one goal, right at the 90th minute. But this wasn't some triumphant moment. It didn't offer any real comfort. It wasn't a comeback. People described it as more like a tiny little scar on top of a huge, devastating wound. If anything, it just highlighted how massive the defeat really was. So, as you can probably guess, a result this extreme doesn't just stay on the sports pages. This one game kicked off a massive debate that went way beyond those 90 minutes. A debate about the very nature of the sport itself. And these were the kinds of questions people started asking. Should cup competitions even allow for these huge mismatches? Does the system need to do more to protect smaller clubs from this kind of humiliation? Or is this just how it is? Is this brutal but fair justice, where the better team wins and that's the end of it? And the whole debate pretty much split into two different camps. On one side, you have people who see this as the raw beauty of sport. It's pure meritocracy, plain and simple. The better team won, that's it. But on the other side, you've got folks who see this as a perfect example of cruel inequality, a result that shows that the whole system has some serious flaws. So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, when you start to piece it all together, this one game stops being just a shocking result and turns into a really powerful real-world lesson. When all was said and done, the final verdict was pretty clear and pretty unflinching. Manchester City absolutely deserved the victory, and Exeter's defeat, as painful as it was, didn't come with any excuses. The scoreboard, at the end of the day, was just telling the truth about what happened on the pitch. And maybe this is the biggest takeaway of all. The real legacy of this match isn't the 10 goals. It's going to be remembered as a very stark, very unforgettable, and very expensive lesson in what real-world football is all about. Because when you strip away all the romance and the underdog stories, you're left with a pretty hard-hitting truth. Professional football is a world of brutal hierarchies and just relentless standards. And that night proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. So it leaves us with this final thought. When we watch a game that ends 10-1, are we seeing justice? You know, the pure justice of competition where the best just naturally come out on top? Or are we actually seeing a kind of cruelty, one that's baked right into the systems of the sports we love so much?